Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inner Talks. My name is Jackie, and today I have the honor to introduce Carlos Diaz. He graduated from the University of Texas as an electrical engineer, and he has had a lot of experience in sales, marketing, management, worked for very important companies such as IBM. He started two companies of his own, and hopefully he's going to share a little more of how that experience was for him. He has also gone through the path of education for a long time and business. And today, I hope you learn as much as I have learned from him. Carlos, thank you very much for being here with us today. And I would love for you to introduce yourself. Who is Carlos Diaz and how did your journey begin?
How did the journey begin? All right. Well, thank you for having me, Jackie. It's a pleasure and an honor to be one of your guests here in your podcast. I love podcasts, and especially when they are organized and conducted by an alumni of CIW. I am from the border. Okay, I was born in Sonora, and I was raised in Piedras Negras, Coahuila, about 120 miles from San Antonio. And there, my father was a customs official, and I finished grammar school and high school, secundaria, in Piedras Negras, and then faced with an alternative because at that time there were no higher education in Piedras Negras. My father offered to pay my tuition in Eagle Pass High School, where I graduated back in 1955. That's way before most of you and your parents were born. That's many years ago. But at the high school, I began to I was introduced to music. I played an instrument at the band and played football. I did some debate that helped my English. And then when I finished high school, I was helped by a counselor at the high school to apply to 50 US universities because I could not afford to come back to Mexico City. At that time, Piedras Negras nor Saltillo was the nearest college. So I applied to 50 US colleges, got an offer for about 3-year scholarships, but none had the scholarship at the beginning of my university studies. So I picked one that they offered me a full scholarship based on merit and based on need. But it was way up in the north of Texas called Paris Junior College. They gave me a room, they gave me a job, which I needed. I was washing dishes on the cafeteria. And then at night, I was cleaning toilets at the dorm. So that I paid my whole college that way. After a year there, I transferred to the University of Texas at Austin. I'm a Longhorn. But 1 year before I graduated, I looked at what I was doing as an engineer. I didn't like it. So besides, I didn't want to stay in the United States. I had a working visa. I could work at the same time I studied. And therefore, I made a bold decision. I came all the way to Mexico City in the bus that took me like 20 hours and looked for a job, okay? A full-time job, but during the summer. And I got acquainted with several US companies, and one hired me, Honeywell, as a draftsman. So I drew technical plans for the summer, and I love Mexico City. I've never been here. See? Wow. And I love the climate, I love the job, and of course, I love the girls. Beautiful, beautiful senoritas,
Yes, yes.
And I said, I'm going to come back here. So after a year, I finished my studies. I interviewed several companies, General Electric, among them TI, Texas Instruments, but I decided on IBM. IBM offered me the job of a salesman. And I became electronic data processing, or they call it EDP, salesperson. And they pointed me at the direction of selling large systems. And that's what I did. I sold some of the largest systems in Latin America in the early 70s. And I was promoted to manager and regional manager and so forth and so on. And then that began my career. I graduated as an engineer, but I'm Sad to say, I never practiced my engineering knowledge. They looked at me and he said, Mr. Diaz, you're going to be a salesperson. And I said, I never sold anything in my life. I've been a janitor, a typist. I've been, many, many jobs I had during my college, but I've never been a salesman. He said, don't worry, IBM will teach you. And I became a very, very successful salesperson. And then from then on, I had jobs in sales management, marketing management, and I had a couple of general managers' job. I was general manager of Duracell, the batteries here in Mexico, and Moulinex, the French small appliances manufacturer. And both of them had factories here in Mexico. So I had not only the sales, the marketing function, but I had the manufacturing under my belt. Okay.
Wonderful.
Then after, I don't know, 20, 25 years, I decided to strike it on my own. I first started a company with two friends of mine selling small appliances to Mexican housewives using a very Mexican way of selling, which is the tanda. The tanda is, for those that may not know what it is, it's a combination of layaway, el apartado, and installment payment, en abonos. So you make a commitment saying, let's say 1,000 pesos every 15 days. And in one of those quincenas or 15 days, you will get your gadget, your TV or your microwave or whatever you're purchasing from us. And the one that's gonna come and collect the money and give you the gadget is a promoter. And it works sort of like the Tupperware party system, right? Somebody that you know in the building or the neighborhood will come and say, Comadrita, how would you like to have a microwave oven or this latest TV or whatever, what we were selling? We had about 50 items in our catalog. We were very successful because we were, at the time, Mexico was, the interest rates was very high. Okay? Then the interest rates came down and I had to look for another opportunity. And then I became an international associate of an Austin-based company on how to work in teams. It's a teamwork company, okay?
Okay.
Based upon the research of two very distinguished psychologists, Dr. Robert Blake and Jane Mouton, that were professors at UT Austin, okay? They developed the system and it was very well received by companies. So a friend of mine passed on the franchise to me, and I held that franchise for about 15 years.
Wow.
Traveled through Mexico, Central America, went a couple of times to Spain to conduct the seminars, and a couple of times to the US in Arizona and Florida for international companies that had Mexican executives in the States, and they were not so sure about their English. So I conducted those seminars in Spanish. Okay.
All the story that you've shared with us so far, it has a lot of assimilation processes. Like you started in the border, then you came to Austin, and then from Austin to Mexico City. I would also like to know, how was that experience for you in terms of assimilation? Like, why did you end up liking Mexico City so much compared to the places that you were before?
Well, the choice of going from the border, Piedras Negras, right across the Eagle Pass, to Austin was how would you say, natural, because I chose first my career, electrical engineering, and then the University of Texas, because between you and I, it was the cheapest option I had, okay? It was a state university that had the Good Neighbor Scholarship, where my tuition, instead of being out of state or out of country, I paid the same tuition as a Texas citizen, as a Texan resident, excuse me. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So they have to this day, they still have that scholarship to students that come from Mexico and one to study at UT. Okay, and the 4 years I spent at Austin were, the happiest times I spent in my early part of my life. I had I had many American friends, some Indian and Japanese friends, because the international community of students in UT is about 10% of the student body, which is 50,000. So about 5,000 students from
Yes.
all parts of the world live and study and party and play together. Okay, so it was
Yes.
very, very interesting for me. My English at that time was good, so therefore I had no problems with communication. And my grades were B. Okay, I never was an A student, but I never flunked one course in my 4 years.
That's amazing.
How I chose Mexico City, the job chose me.
Okay. So when you started looking for jobs, like that the city caught you, and then I bet like it's such a different experience when you come to Mexico City for the first time. I can just imagine how that process was for you.
When IBM offered me a job, and they said, we're going to train you to be a salesperson selling large electronic data systems. Okay.
Yes.
I had like 2 years of immersion, total immersion, not in school, but on the job training. In other words,
Yeah.
they gave me some accounts and I had to visit those accounts and get acquainted with what they needed. And then I went back to the office and say, what can I offer them? It was on the job training, and I became a very, very successful systems, data systems salesperson. Um, at the same time, I was getting to know Mexico City. I bought my first car. I didn't have a car until about 6 months after I graduated from UT. I was riding the bus because I didn't have enough money.
Yes, yes, yes.
And then, like 8 or 9 months, no, about a year, almost like a year after I arrived in Mexico City, something very wonderful happened to me. I met
Let me
my
guess.
future wife.
Wow.
In 1961, I met my wife.
Nice.
I asked her for her ring, for her hand, to her parents. My parents came from Piedras Negras in a ceremony, and there in the home of my future in-laws. We asked for the hand of Consuelo. We married in June of 62. So we've been married for 62 years now. Okay.
Wow.
4 children and 8 grandchildren.
Such a beautiful aspect of life that I believe is so important to mention when we're talking about our journeys, because it's like how to balance everything. That's something that I typically like talking with my guests is um, having all these passions that you had by the time, like being a professional in the field, immersing yourself, learning all of that, and at the same time trying to balance of being Carlos, right? Having this personal life, and how did you manage all of that? And I know that we are about to jump in the question of how did this educating path started for you after all these years in the industries. So I just wanted to say that I'm grateful you shared that part of your life with us, because I believe it's key in the life of an individual. It either can bring you up, or sometimes there's relationships that can hold you or get you stuck. And I don't think that's the situation with you at all. You've always shared with me the teammate that you have in your life, and that's such a beautiful story. So please, Carlos, if you can share a little bit of how your path as an educator started.
Okay, well, as I said, I worked at IBM, then I worked in companies like Singer, sewing machines, and Duracell, and Xerox. I did some years in planning and marketing planning in Xerox, Mexico. Always, except for two companies, I was always working with US multinationals, which had two benefits for me. Number one, they paid better. But secondly, I practiced my English all the time. I had either American bosses or American citizens, experts technicians working for me, okay? Um, Business, I traveled a lot into the States. When I worked for a couple of French companies, I traveled to Europe, and I took my family sometimes to the States. So to me, the education of Carlos Diaz has never stopped. I'm always learning. Even now as a professor, I'm learning from my students. You know, the new techniques, the AI, they're teaching me AI, okay? And so I never stopped learning, and I've been like a sponge, okay, absorbing information, trying to put it to work together. That, I would say, that attitude of learning. And one more that I think has distinguished me from my colleagues is that I have never been afraid of selling a product, selling a class, a topic, a marketing or management, and selling myself to my students, to my clients, to my friends. Okay, I'm a born salesman. Okay,
Yes.
that added that, how would you say, trait or talent, if you want to call it, has given me much satisfaction.
Absolutely. And you're so right on that. Like sometimes we forget the importance of sales. I've been a salesperson myself without trying to be. Like I think you're right. Life sometimes puts us in the right places for us to develop certain skills that we didn't even know we had. And for me, that happened too in terms of sales. I was like selling different products in different companies, and I enjoy the process so much that I would love for you to share with us what would be your advice of the importance of sales in life, because you said something really important right now. You need to learn how to sell yourself, because at the end of the day we are selling ideas all the time. Like we are learning something, but now how can I put it to the service, and how can I bring it to others? So what would you say to those students, professionals that are listening to us right now, on how do you start to sell, to be a little bit more confident of the things you know, and how can this help them through life?
Well, you start with identifying yourself with your prospect or customer. And by that, you need to ask questions and try to, like we say, put yourself in this person's shoes. What does he need? What does he want? What does he dream about? What should he be thinking, or he or she be thinking about at this time? Health issues, in our case, for being a senior citizen. Um, in the case of my grandchildren, for example, they're starting college. What do you want? What do you see yourself into? In other words, you ask a lot of questions, because as I said to my class yesterday, we should be obsessed with the customer. We should be thinking like him, like her, so that we can understand what are his needs. All right. Once you establish that, and if it's a company, what do they need? Faster processors, or they need a faster, more efficient payroll system, whatever they're looking for in the area, manufacturing or administration. Try to find their needs. Then look into your catalog, all right, into your code. Do I have a product here that can serve this customer or this prospect? All right. If you don't, then be honest and say, Mr. Customer or Mr. Prospect, Mr. Smith or Mr. Garcia, I have enjoyed so much our talk. Okay. Unfortunately, my company does not have anything that resembles what you need. But I'm going to refer you to another type of company that might have what you need. Because I think what you need is ABC. And unfortunately, my company doesn't have ABC. They have XYZ. All right. So be honest.
Yes.
Be honest. Speak always with the truth. Now, if you're lucky, and if you have ABC, And that's what the customer says. Then explain ABC, not in bits and bytes, not in megas or time of response. No, explain to him how he will benefit from having this product or service that you're selling. Look, Mr. Diaz, Mr. Garcia, you take 2-3 days to do your payroll. How would you like to have it in one day, all right, with minimum effort and no mistakes? Well, let me explain how my system can do this for you. Right? So you always do that. And once you do that, you ask them, well, are there any doubts? And then you say, well, how about if we proceed and sign the order? All right.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
finally, after you install that system or whatever you're selling, then you ask him, how did you enjoy our product or service? Can we do anything more to satisfy you, to make you a happier customer, Mr. Garcia?
I love
You
it.
close the sale. You close the sale by asking, what else can you need?
Yes. And you're so right about, I have never heard that term of getting obsessed with the client, but that's so true. At the end of the day, it's like you have to study the person that you have in front of you, like constantly, right? So thank you for sharing that. I think that's very valuable information for those of us who love sales. And I didn't want to lose the chance to ask you that myself, because I perceive myself as somebody that is in a constant selling situation. And I wanted also to talk to you, Carlos, about your experience once you were already an educator and you started teaching. You also had like the experience between Universidad Panamericana, Universidad Centro Universitario Incarnate Worth. Uh, what have your experiences been in teaching and bringing all this knowledge in the classroom? Like, I know you are very passionate of teaching, but what can you say about this? Like, maybe even cultural differences. I don't know what you encounter, but I would love to hear those
Okay.
experiences out.
Before I answer that question, let me just finish the selling part with one
Absolutely.
advice
Yes.
to some students that might be listening or watching this
Yes,
podcast.
please.
I have conducted selling and marketing classes for many years now. But one thing that I ask my students during the semester, I say, if when you're looking for a job, they say, the only job we have available is the sales job, okay, a sales position. Don't ever say no. I don't care if you say, I know, las ventas, I don't like sales, and so forth and so on. No, it's a fantastic opportunity for you to be trained on the product and services, number one. And number two, to train you how to communicate ideas and how to convince people. So never say no to sales, guys, okay? Now, let's go on to your question, which is my education experience, okay? Well, thanks to the previous company that I own, that I had, which was being a franchisee of a company from Austin, Texas. At that time, it was called Scientific Methods. Now it is called GRID, G-R-I-D, GRID International Inc. That's the name of the company now. Thanks to this training, I had to be trained how to give seminars at the beginning of my experience with them. But then I practiced that for 15 years. So when I was invited by the Universidad Panamericana to give classes to juniors and senior students of marketing and business careers. It was a very easy transition, okay? Because I was accustomed to three things that we have to do as a professor in college. Number one, organize your thoughts, organize the material you're going to give. In other words, the professor's job doesn't start when he stands in front of the class and say, hey guys, let's start. No, maybe 2 or 3 days before that, he organized the material. He knows what he's going to have to do. He takes all the material he needs, the book, the computer, or whatever, okay? Secondly, be very open to the questions from the students. See, we think as professors, we think we know it all, but we don't. We're just a student of human behavior, maybe, all right? We're trying to transmit knowledge from we have, or the book, or the whatever media we use, transmit knowledge to the minds of our students, all right? That's no easy task, because we have to make the students understand first, speak slowly, clearly, and loudly, all right?
Yes.
Speak that, use visuals, and then ask, is this clear? Can you give me an example? Can this be applied in Mexico or in the US or in your company or at the university? You think we should benefit from this knowledge, all right?
Yes.
And finally, give them a project where they can apply that knowledge. That has been my motto, you know. I don't teach theory. I teach how to put some knowledge developed by many brighter minds than mine, the authors of the textbooks, for example, into a project that could be useful for you, for the country, or for the company you're going to work for. Let's put it to use, okay?
Yes.
So my experience then going from teaching, I was conducting seminars for managers, supervisors, managers, directors, and general managers. Those are the people that attended my scientific or grid seminars, as we call them. To college was significant because then I had to deal with young adults instead of medium age or middle age or sometimes senior citizen adults already in key positions of a company, all right? And I had to change my, how would you say, my DNA, not my DNA, you don't change your DNA, but you change your methodology, right?
Yes.
I
Yes.
had
Yes.
to
Of
teach
course.
to them at their level, all right? And Panamericana, my first teaching position, was key because at that time, Panamericana was growing, and they had a lot of professionals like me who never studied how to be a professor or a teacher. I never took a how to teach class, you know. I
Yes.
said,
Yes.
well, this is the way I taught general managers. I'm going to teach you. And they said, well, wait a minute, Carlos, you have a different audience. And thank God, Panamericana invested in me. They sent me to a couple of workshops, 20, 25 hours workshop that I
Okay.
had to fit into my schedule so that they could teach me how to teach. So they gave me a lot of information, a lot of reference, and they made me even rehearse a presentation and how would I conduct this? And let's say a student falls asleep in the classroom. What are you gonna do? All right. You poke
Yes.
them in the ribs, or you say, hey, hey, we're in class, wake up. You know?
Yes.
So they taught me a lot of stuff. So when 10 years later, uh, for some personal reason, I wanted to go to another university. Uh, CIW got Carlos Diaz trained to be a professor, a successful professor. My students gave me a very high critique or rating, okay? And I even was welcoming the fact that I would be teaching again in English. Let me tell you about this English thing, okay, in teaching.
Yes.
Uh, it was very important for me to be successful in Panamericana. I closed my company uh, giving seminars, and I, embarked on a new career. And my supervisor, a beautiful guy that I still have a lot of conversation with, he's now a professor of Tecnológico. Roberto said, Carlos, how come you don't teach in English? I said, come on, Roberto. At that time already was named a professor. I had my class and so forth and so on. And he said, wait a minute, Carlos, why aren't you teaching in English? I said, they won't understand, Roberto. We're Mexicans. We don't speak English. He said, yeah, but you speak very good English, Carlos.
Yes.
Why don't you teach in English? And I said, well, how can I do that? They don't understand me. He said, well, that's your job, Carlos. Speak slowly, clearly, loudly, have a lot of visuals, and be always asking them, do you understand? And if they don't understand, say it in Spanish, okay? And then I would say, then they would get it, okay? So since then, since my second year of teaching at Panamericana, I taught all my classes in English. At that time, Panamericana was not a requirement to teach in English. It was a plus. And I felt so good when students, for those who do not know this, Panamericana is a very large school, okay? So
Yes.
you can choose the professor and the hour and day that you would choose that you take your class. Say you have to take mathematics 2, okay? So you could say, I could take it with Mr. Diaz or Mr. Brown or Mr. Perez or whatever at different hours. They would come to my class and say, Mr. Diaz, is it true that you teach this subject in English only? I said, yeah. Me no hablar español. So they said, okay, I'm in, okay. And I had my classes at full capacity because they wanted not only to learn the topic, but also to learn it in the English language. And because I was teaching business related topics, it fit right in what they were trying to learn before going on to a professional life.
Yes.
Okay, differences between UPE and CIW, basically the type of students, okay? At
Yeah.
Panamericana, we have a very, how would you say, upper middle class students that they come from um, prep schools a little bit high up, okay? In CIW, we have solid middle class students, both parents working, okay? And they appreciate more the effort that their parents are having in sending them to a private school.
Yes.
They
Thank you
are,
for
yeah, go ahead.
sharing that. Uh, Thank you, Carlos. I would like to add something on what you were saying about starting to teach in English and how this impacted your career as a professor. And I will say that as a student of yours myself, uh, it was more than the language. Even though I didn't had you like face to face, we had like the first virtual modality of international marketing. I must say that beyond the language, and that's why before I was trying to talk a little bit of the immersion of cultures and all your experiences, because you always made sure to bring those elements into your classes. Like for me, taking a class of yours was me feeling that I was presenting in front of a manager, like in front of like being in a company. And as professionals, we need that. Like when we are studying, we need to know how the industries out there feel. And sometimes we don't get that when we're just sitting there and learning a subject. It is more than that. So I think I wanted to add that because definitely studying with you was that for me. Like it was how to present, how to be professional, how to I remember like putting pictures in presentations, but having where is the source from, like make sure that you're being accurate about all of what you're doing. So that is very important, and I think you wouldn't be able to have that if it wasn't for all your past experiences in big companies and your life as an entrepreneur. So that's something that I really wanted to point out. And also, this is something that came to my mind when you were talking about starting your companies and working in IBM and then teaching. So I wanted to know which of all those hats that you have like wore throughout your life you have enjoyed the most, or you would say that all of them have been great. What would you say?
It's a question of maturity. When I was in my late 20s. I graduated from UT when I was 26. Got married at
Okay.
28. Okay. So the next 10 years, 10, 15 years, all my years, 10 years with IBM, and then the other companies, I was maturing as a professional. All right. Not only I had to sell, I had to manage. Okay. When they named me manager at IBM, I said, how do I manage? What, where's the ABC? Where's the book in management? I realized that being an engineer and a salesman didn't make me a manager. And I had to learn some hard knocks. Okay.
Yes.
Finally, when I joined my next company, somebody realized that Carlos was an engineer turned salesman and so forth and so on, but he never attended graduate school. So I remember my GM at that time was a Frenchman. He said, Carlos, I just realized you haven't had any management training. We're going to send you to the IPADE. For those that don't know, IPADE means Instituto Panamericano de Alta Dirección de Empresas.
Sí.
This is where Mexican businessmen send their managers to be trained as managers instead of sending them to Harvard. Okay. IPADE has the Harvard method. Okay. So I went there for a year, all right, part time. At the same time, I was sales manager for this company. And finally, I realized, how difficult is a manager's job. Okay. And
Yes.
that prepared me for being later a director and then a GM, a general manager, which is another part of my career. In other words, I became a salesman, sales manager, but then I became a manager, okay, which is a different profession completely. All right. Then another 20 years went by, 20, 25, and I became an entrepreneur. That's a different type of animal. Well, excuse me, the metaphor. Uh,
No, it's good.
it's different type of mentality.
Yes. Yes.
You know, you do not have a fixed salary. Yes, you can make as much money as you want. Yes, but first you have to pay the rent. First, you have to pay the salaries. First, you have to pay your suppliers. If you're selling, like I was buying and selling, I was a reseller, basically in my first company. Then the second part, you have to be sure, you have to be very well organized because you cannot afford to get sick. I got sick a couple of times and it was tough, okay? You have to lead people. You have to trust people, all right? And you have to manage your money very carefully when you're an entrepreneur, okay?
Yes.
So that was another part of my maturing process, if you will. Finally, when I was 60 something, I became a professor, okay? And that's another part of my life that I, enjoy very much, all right?
Yes.
Which is transmitting knowledge and experiences to young generations like you. Okay.
Yes.
So if you want to split my life in three major blocks, you say, well, Carlos was a corporate person. He was as a salesman, a manager, a general manager. He worked for a company. Secondly, Carlos started his own company. He had to look where to put this office. Where would I put the warehouse? How much would I buy to sell? All those things he had now to respond only to himself, not to the stockholders. And
Yes.
finally, now Carlos is enjoying very much the act of transmitting knowledge, of forming new professionals.
I love it. And thank you for answering that question, because the reason I ask it is because there's a lot of criticism sometimes to diversity in terms of knowledge or fields of training, and people tend to see like, I'm going to study this and I'm going to do that for the rest of my life, and they forgot a little bit of how diverse we are as individuals. And that's what I love the most about your story. And we can do a little bit of all when we actually enjoy the processes. And the fact that you're dividing your life like that, as you said, it just helping us understand how processes also in life go, to the point of like, what is resonating with you right now at this point of your life, right? And I I hear you, like the fact of transmitting knowledge is so important. And because of that reason, Carlos, I wanted to ask you, what would your advice be for those students or young people that struggle with motivation? Like, I think that's a big issue nowadays in terms of trying to finish their careers, like study a degree, and they lack that motivation. What would you say from all your expertise of getting things done, leading people, getting into so many different places, parts of the world? What can you share with us in that terms with when?
Well, for those that are now at a university, whether it's CIW or whatever other university you might be studying in, okay?
Yes.
Your 4 or 5 years, whatever you're going to spend that time of your life, um, acquiring knowledge, they are preparing you for what's coming, which is professional life, right? So during that period of 4 years, never stop learning. You're going to have about 50 to 60 professors doing their best to teach you a subject, all right? Try to learn as much as that professors or uh, teachers are going to try to transmit to you. Don't become obsessed with grades, please.
Yes.
Life is not an A or a B, okay? Life is enjoying your work. Now, try to find something good in every subject that we give you, all right? Whether it's the professor's experience or this book that he recommends or his exercise that he made you do, and try to enjoy at least 2 things out of each class. Most students have like 4 or 5, maybe 6 classes every semester. You know, try to find something joyful in every one of them. With this professor, I like the way he gives jokes or tells jokes. So this one about how he makes some very worthwhile comments about the author of the theory, whatever, okay? And secondly, try to think that this is a stage of your life, all right? It's going to be short. 4 years in a, what is the life expectancy right now of a Mexican is about 70 something, okay?
Really?
It's not even 10% of your life you're going to spend in college, right? Enjoy it, okay? Try to get us not to know as many professors and many students. People are key. They used to tell me when I graduated, it's not what you know, Carlos, it's who you know, all right? So try to make as many friends as you can with professors too. Try to get to know them as persons, okay? When you throw that tassel up in the air and you graduated, be sure you're ready because the most wonderful adventure is going to begin. See, we're just preparing you for what's coming up. We're just coaches, all right? Trying to make you sweat a little bit and make you run faster and breathe easier during your preparation because the big life begins when you start working, okay? One more advice for all of you, okay? Get a part-time job in the last year or maybe the last 2 years of your school. The first question they're going to ask you when they interview for a job is, what experience do you have? If you say, well, I was too busy studying and getting good grades, they're going to put you aside and let you, and they're going to interview somebody that, I don't know, answered customer complaints, filled out forms, made inventories. Even, like me, I was a janitor, okay? For many years of my life. Well, I cleaned the best way I could do the toilets, okay? I'm a good toilet. That's the experience I have. But
Yes.
they want you to have some real work experience. So as soon as you can, maybe on your junior year, If not at your senior year, the most, try to get a part-time job. Okay. So you can put in your resume, I was assistant to the assistant to the assistant manager in this company for, for 6 months, and I solved this and this and this problem for him, or her.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be my advice. Enjoy the ride and
Thank
get to know people. People are wonderful. We all have stories. Get to know the stories of your professor.
I love those advices, and I hope that every single one of you that is listening understands the importance of all of the things you just mentioned in this conversation, which is so valuable. Thank you so much, Carlos, for your time. And I would also like to add to that part that you say it's who you know. I heard this term a couple of months ago in which they told me, build your net worth, like not your network, but your net worth. And I think this completely changed my perception on getting to know people, getting closer to them, and just enjoying the process of getting to know somebody. It's not really to go to see what you can get from them, but who you have in front as an individual. So I appreciate your time a lot. And I would like to close our time together by closing with, I believe still to this day, I'm a big romantic. And I think that talking about the family aspect is so important. So I would love to close this conversation with you, asking you about this beautiful project that you form of your wife, your sons, daughters. Uh, you would say that keeping those two worlds of yours was hard for you, or was it an easy blend for you to keep all of it together? I would really like to know that to close our conversation.
I was very lucky to have very loving parents. My father, even though he never kissed me, he was so proud of me when I graduated from college. And he gave me a comment that, in a way you could say, well, he had a little faith in you. But to him, my father did not finish grammar school because of the revolution. He was born in 1902. When he was in fifth grade of revolution, Pancho Villa and Zapata came into the city and they closed all the schools. And
Yes.
then his father died and he had to start working to support his mother, okay, and his brothers. He was one of the eldest. So when he hugged me in my graduation day, he said, I never thought you could go this far.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Wow.
Then he only lived 2 years after I graduated. But then I met my wife, and my wife is the most wonderful person you have ever met. Okay, she is just a paradigm for me. Um, I was offered several jobs in my career. Okay, the first job I got offered was, we had to sit in IBM, taking calls from people that wanted our systems. So one guy said, "Come over. I'm the general manager of Esterbrook Pens. I want you to come in and help me out with my factory." So I went in and looked at the factory, and I was trying to think of a system how to fix. I mean, how to solve his problems. When he said, "Mr. Diaz, how much they pay you at IBM?" I said, "So much." He said, "I'll double the salary." Because I never had seen a person so interested in my factory. Really? Yeah, I want you to become factory manager. You're an engineer, right? Okay, factory manager, double your salary. So I went back home, and I said, well, let me think about it. So I went back home. I said, "Consuelo, they offered me this job." And he said, "What do you know about making fountain pens?" I said, "Not a thing." He said, "You'd be a fool to take it." So she said, "No, that's not the way for you." So many of my biggest decisions, I always consulted with her because she has a very clear mind. Okay. My children, 4 children. My father never finished grammar school. I was the only person in my family that got a college degree. Okay. My 4 children all got college degrees, and 3 of them got MBAs, got master's degrees. Okay.
Yes.
grandchildren. I have one on one step being away from a PhD. Okay. All of them are going to get a college. I know that because all my children are saying, no, college is first. So what can I say? I've been blessed. I've been
Yes.
blessed by the wife God gave me. I've been blessed by the jobs they found. They found me, and finally I've been blessed with the profession that I now profess for the last 22 years. I've been blessed with those activities. I have many, 2 or 3 very serious illnesses. I'm a diabetic, I have high blood pressure, but I don't care because
You,
I can manage those. I can manage those.
yes.
What I don't manage is how the economy is going. That's what I can manage. But thank God that CIW is giving me classes and classes, and they want me to help them with different projects. I'm blessed. I'm blessed.
Carlos, you're such an inspiration, and I loved what you said about managing what's in your control at the end of the day, and what it's not, just putting it in God's hands. You're so right about being blessed. I think you left a legacy in your family, which you can clearly see right now with your um, with your
Grandchildren, my grandchildren are going to
grandchildren.
take on. They're in
Yes.
charge now of the future. Okay.
Yes. And that's why I wanted to mention that part of family, because I do believe that all we have done, we pass it through our future generations. So again, I want to thank your time today. It was an honor for me to talk to you, learn from you, and I hope we can leave this space open for us to continue further conversations about other different topics that might come along with the curiosities of our students, professionals in the field that might want to learn more about leadership and other different like stories of yours. As of today, I think all of the things that you've shared, and again, like I hope we can continue these conversations in the near future.
Anytime, anytime. And to those who are listening, you can find me at CIW. My mail is cdiaz@ciw.edu.mx, or just ask Abraham. He knows where to find me.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you very much to all of
Thank
those
you,
who
Jackie. Thank you very much for the interview.